Time on in the last quarter. It's been a great pleasure to have John Worsfold as our guest on the couch, and you've handled it beautifully. Have you enjoyed your season in the media?
I have really enjoyed it, yeah. And it's just at that time of year now, though, where I go out to Perth Airport to fly to Melbourne and I get some very suspicious looks, like, why are you heading over there?
Now that you're in the media, is Michael Malthouse too defensive a coach?
I think he's got a defensive game plan, there's no doubt about that, and it worked for the Eagles up until probably the last couple of years. It hasn't been as successful, but it's a judgment thing, because with the squad they've got, have the Eagles still been very good to make the finals, or could they have done better? And I believe it still works pretty well, but maybe he needs to refine it a little bit.
Malthouse, private citizen, we don't see a lot of him. I mean, the public persona is very dour. The relationship with the players with him, I mean, is he good fun, sort of behind the scenes?
He keeps his distance as coach. He makes sure that... Mick's always said that he wants to be able to make the tough decisions without having any of that emotion in it, and he's kept his distance, but the players respect him, and he goes to player functions and does have a good time. And
just another question to John Worsfold, media performer. Who's going to win it this year with the Eagles fading from contention?
Yeah, I think on current form, just looking at Brisbane's form over the last few weeks, and they're a fair chance to get 2 home finals. I think they may, be a big chance to get through. But I like Essendon. I really like the way they've played. But and you never write off the old stages, the Kangaroos.
And just a quick...
Yeah, I was going to say the Bulldogs. Yeah, but it's so open. It really is. And the final makeup of the top 8 after round 22 is going to be really interesting to see who plays who.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Mike and Terry. That's it for tonight, and we leave you with Pluggers' farewell at the SCG.
He's done it all, and today at the end he kicked 8. And Plugger, we'll never forget you, mate. Ever, ever, ever. Thanks for it all. The last time. And those blokes did him proud, every last one of them. From the youngies to the oldies, they played their heart out.
This programme brought to you by McCain. Ah, McCain, you've done it again.
Steve Pratt's wife appeals to Yugoslavia for his freedom.
I'll keep the hope and the faith they will be coming soon.
A high-tech army aircraft joins the search for missing snowboarders. And the Roosters devastating in the build-up to the NRL finals.
With Chris Bath, this is 7 Nightly News.
Good evening. A videotaped appeal for compassion and humanity has been sent to Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic from Samira Pratt, the wife of jailed Care Australia worker Steve Pratt. She's asked the Yugoslav leader to free her husband so he can share the birth of their first child, due in 2 weeks.
The little baby is coming, and really I want my husband to be with me.
Samira Pratt has come to Canberra to have her child. In Yugoslavia, her attempts to secure her husband's release failed, but she continues the fight.
Having a child alone is very difficult, and being separated from my husband is the most unpleasant thing could happen to me.
Care Australia workers Steve Pratt, Peter Wallace and Branko Jelen were jailed in Belgrade more than 4 months ago for spying. Mrs Pratt's appeal will be supported by messages from former South African President Nelson Mandela, former US President Jimmy Carter and Reverend Jesse Jackson. It was Jackson who led 3 captured US soldiers to freedom.
Free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last.
But Jackson and Care's chairman Malcolm Fraser both failed to free the Care staffers. Formal clemency pleas will be considered by Mr Milosevic this week.
This is a very key moment.
President Milosevic is under increasing pressure at home trying to defend his leadership after the NATO bombing campaign helped push Yugoslav forces out of Kosovo. Samira Pratt has emphasised her husband was against the bombing.
Steve, as an Australian, is brought up to disapprove violence, injustice, and to love peace and humanity.
Now Mr Milosevic has been indicted as an international war criminal. Freeing the men could be a chance for him to show some humanity. Heather Wellard, 7 Nightly News.
A specially equipped army plane has tonight joined the search for 4 snowboarders missing for a week in the snowy mountains. Rani Sadler at Perisher, what can this plane do?
It's a fixed-wing aircraft with the world's best thermal imaging equipment. It's more advanced heat-seeking equipment than we've seen in the search so far, and it'll take searchers into the night. The plane's circling around tonight until midnight. There have been questions as to why the plane hasn't been brought in earlier, but the Army says it's still in the trial phase and hasn't been proven in operations.
Realistically though, Rani, how long can the search go on?
At this stage, Chris, police are saying it'll be a miracle if the men are found alive. Weather conditions again look bad tomorrow, which of course makes searching difficult. Police are mystified why they haven't been able to find any trace of the man, not even a dropped glove or a lolly wrapper or food scraps. And if it goes on like this, it looks like they're going to scale down the search on Wednesday.
We'll leave it there. Thanks, Rani. Now, as we heard, today's search only brought disappointment. No sign of the 4 men, Paul and Scott Beardsmore, Timothy Friend and Dean Pincini.
2 days of intensive searching in perfect weather have been frustratingly fruitless. Helicopters and thermal imaging cameras have done all they can. Rescuers are running out of options.
The hope of finding them alive has diminished in the last couple of days.
Charlie Sanderson ran the rescue operation that saw Stuart Diver pulled from the rubble of the Thredbo landslide. He says search teams have scoured 300 square kilometres and found absolutely nothing.
The basis on which you search as hard as we've searched is that you would expect to find some clue to the whereabouts of these people. And, you know, we have found no clue.
A large snow ridge near Mount Kosciuszko and a camping spot used before by the 4 Sydney men have both been searched exhaustively.
You should be able to ride out up the top end of it, swing around and come out onto where the lookout is here.
Now search teams are double and triple checking sites they've already been over with metal detectors that probe deep beneath the snow. Police say there's a critical lesson in this for anyone who skis away from the big resorts. Leave detailed plans of where you're going and make sure you stick to them. In the Snowy Mountains, Jeff Bruce, 7 Nightly News.
The Sydney Olympics marching band row has ended harmoniously. After a 1-hour court hearing, SOCOG agreed to pay World Projects Director Bill Lutt to the tune of $1 million.
They'd been talking all weekend, but still they went to court. World Projects Corporation began its case. SOCOG had known since February the band would be made up of Americans, Japanese and Australians. Olympics Minister Michael Knight knew deposits had been taken from some band members. Mr Knight had told World Projects Director Bill Lutt SOCOG was pulling the plug hours before the SOCOG board voted on it. And it was SOCOG Chief Executive Sandy Holway who'd signed the contract despite denials by Mr Knight.
That contract was signed by staff.
By Sandy Holway or by someone below him?
Below him, further down the line.
World Projects called it a calculated, deliberate and flagrant breach of contract to pander to public opinion. After an hour in court, the settlement, another $1 million.
After 2 months of battling Michael Knight and SOCOG in the courts, we're glad it's over.
The extra $1 million will come from SOCOG's budget. It will cover World Projects' legal costs and higher expenses for expanding the band to include musicians from 20 countries.
The buck stops with me and the board. I'm the president, the board will wear the responsibility.
The legal case against Mr Knight is still to come. Paul Marshall, 7 Nightly News.
Top Australian crime fighters are talking tactics on how to stop bikie gang violence. They're not calling the latest attacks a bikie war, but with shootings and firebombings around the country, police admit they have to go on the offensive.
Violence within bikie gangs is on the rise. One possible motive, they're carving up the country to make money from crime.
We are aware of a story about a year 2000 pact. None of us have any evidence to suggest that such a pact in fact does exist.
Rivalry between the gangs is intense. It's understood the Bandidos Club has deserted its Osborne headquarters. It was firebombed earlier this year.
Opposition leader Mike Rann will meet with the head of the NCA in Sydney tomorrow. He's calling for more staff and more resources to tackle the gang violence, as well as the organised crime that comes with it.
The motorbikes are the front of it, but in fact they're involved in a range of crimes from prostitution, extortion, kidnapping.
But police are confident they have all the resources they need. They say there's probably no common thread between incidents across the country. Today they discuss various joint strategies. Understandably, they're being kept secret, but they're talking tough.
We will not tolerate criminal violence in any way at all, particularly from outlaw motorcycle gangs.
Jessica Sullivan, 7 Nightly News.
A Melbourne jury has found Sydney man Tony Kellisar guilty of murdering his wife and dumping her body in a bin filled with acid. 29-year-old Svetlana Podgoyetsky disappeared 2 years ago while attending a travel conference at Melbourne's Crown Casino. Kellisar, who's 38, claimed he strangled his wife by accident after they'd had a fight. He then drove the body back to Sydney and dumped it in a bin outside the radiator repair shop where he worked. A Victorian coroner will spend the next year investigating that state's escalating drug problem, specifically the deaths of 25 Australians from heroin overdoses. He'll also hear evidence on how to beat addiction.
Families who lose a loved one to drug overdose usually mourn in private, but their questions are shared by the community. How and why did it happen? A coroner's inquest into 25 heroin-related deaths hopes to answer those questions by identifying the dangers and ways to combat the drug's fatal attraction. The first 6 cases identify several risk factors, including mixing heroin with other drugs, doctor shopping for multiple prescriptions, injecting alone and easy access to heroin. The court was told there are now more heroin-related deaths in Victoria per year than there are deaths involving alcohol on the state's roads. Heroin is also cheaper and as easy to buy as a litre of milk. Dr Bill Woods, who treated one of the victims months before she died, says society must realise heroin use is a disease, not a sin.
Not until society in general starts feeling that way, rather than waiting for so many people's children to die, will anything really change.
Sally Young, 7 Nightly News.
The industry that put Hollywood on the map is under threat from further afield.
Make all noise.
Keep Hollywood in Hollywood!
Thousands of employees in the entertainment industry say they feel they're under siege. More and more films are being made elsewhere, mainly Australia, Canada and Mexico. Actors and producers have marched through the streets of Los Angeles calling for state legislation to make California more competitive. Despite all that anger, Aussie actor Toni Collette is proving a hit in the US. Toni's probably best known as Muriel in the hit movie Muriel's Wedding. Now she's starring alongside action man Bruce Willis in the psychological thriller Sixth Sense. Toni plays the mother of a little boy who sees people after they've died. Sixth Sense is the only movie since The Phantom Menace to hold #1 spot in the US for more than a week. It opens here in October. The Love Boat cruise has ended for Prince Charles. He, Camilla and the princes have all headed home. Details next. And what snoring says about your health.
If you thought All Saints was only about the patients, take a look at this.
So what do you reckon, they had a hot date or a date?
Your meddling may have cost Ben and I the chance of getting it back together again.
All Saints, Tuesday on 7.
Let's talk Ford Festiva.
And you won't be able to stop. Festiva Trio from a low $13,990 drive away. With sporty cloth trim, 4-speaker stereo and air conditioning. How good is that?
Now you're talking, Ford dealers.
Look, they make olive oil. Take a picture here.
Okay, all right.
Buongiorno.
Oh, hi. How are you? Is this your business?
Yes.
Oh, we have our own business too.
Yes, we have 3 stores in Ohio.
Ohio. We sell in Ohio. And California, and Canada, and Argentina, and Australia, and Mexico.
They're on the internet. How can they afford it?
By supporting Barnardo's Australia, when you open your wallet to give money, you'll also be giving smiles to thousands of Australian children.
Children who are abused, neglected and homeless and who desperately need your help.
So please, give generously. Make your donation to Barnardo's on 1800 061 000.
Make 1999 your year of giving and help us put a smile on an Aussie kid's face.